European leaders have been reacting angrily to Donald Trump's threat to impose tariffs on countries resisting his stated desire to take over Greenland. The move has been described as unacceptable and counterproductive, while the Danish Prime Minister has said Europe will not be blackmailed by the US President. President Trump has threatened to impose tariffs on Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, the Netherlands and Sweden, all EU member states, as well as Britain and Norway.
A dangerous downward spiral that risks undermining transatlantic relations. That's how the leaders of the 8 European countries singled out by Donald Trump for new tariffs have described his latest threats, after he dramatically stepped up his pressure campaign to buy Greenland. In a joint statement released this afternoon, they stressed their solidarity with Denmark and the people of Greenland, saying that they were committed to strengthening Arctic security. Some European politicians have gone further with their language.
We will not be blackmailed. There must be a coordinated European response. This is now another point of conflict in the transatlantic relationship.
The move could also have implications for the US-EU trade deal, which was agreed in July and was expected to be ratified later this month. 3 of the largest political groups in the Parliament say they aim to have the vote postponed, while French President Emmanuel Macron is reportedly pushing the EU to deploy its most punitive trade measure against the US, known as the anti-coercion instrument. Donald Trump's threat is also facing opposition domestically too, including from within his own party. Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski, representing Alaska, posted on social media that the tariffs are unnecessary, punitive and a profound mistake. Others disagree.
Peace through strength, make it part of the United States, and there will not be a conflict because the United States right now, we are the hottest country in the world, we are the strongest country in the world. The Europeans project weakness, the US projects strength.
This latest threat already being viewed as perhaps the most serious crisis for US-European relations in the Trump era. Kate Varley, RTÉ News.
Here, the Taoiseach has said the annexation of Greenland is not on the table. Micheál Martin said the EU will retaliate if tariffs are imposed, and he called for dialogue to prevent that from happening.
As the prospect of a trade war between the EU and the US alarmingly returned to the international agenda, the Taoiseach today sought to calm matters and warned of the dire consequences for all sides if tariffs are imposed and the hard-fought trade deal is abandoned.
Obviously, dialogue has to happen to prevent that from occurring. The situation in Greenland is very clear from our perspective. The territorial integrity, the sovereignty of Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark cannot be violated.
The Taoiseach also believes it is premature to trigger the EU's anti-coercion mechanism. But on another patch of ground under threat, this time the playing pitch at Portland Row in Dublin, the Sinn Féin leader urged the EU to take a firm stance.
We need to face down threats and bullying wherever they come from. And I am, of course, very, very concerned at the tone of all of the commentary coming from America, coming from President Trump. It is not the way forward. It is not acceptable.
There were calls too to step up diplomatic efforts in a bid to de-escalate the crisis.
It also means using those diplomatic channels that we have, engaging with Irish America, engaging with congresspeople across both sides of the aisle.
On that front, the Taoiseach insisted that he would visit Washington around St. Patrick's Day, despite those rising tensions. And he stressed again the importance of dialogue and engagement. Micheál Lahan, RTÉ News, Government Buildings.
Well, let's get more on this story from our Washington correspondent Sean Whelan and Europe editor Tony Connolly. Tony, turning to you first of all, EU and European leaders reacting angrily and strongly to Donald Trump's threat to impose tariffs in relation to their stance on Greenland.
That's right, Kate, and there is an emergency meeting of EU ambassadors underway as we speak here in Brussels. Now, on the question of what the EU can do, a lot of focus on this anti-coercion instrument. Under the rules, a member state, for example, can ask the European Commission to investigate if there has been an attempt by a third party to impact or threaten the sovereignty of, for example, of a member state. The Commission can, on its own initiative, take an investigation as well. If that happens, this can take some time, 4 months for the Commission to carry out its investigation, and then 8 weeks for member states to say, yes, there has been clear coercion and look at what measures can be taken. Now, ultimately, they could go for tariffs on US services where the US has a surplus. So that would be a fairly powerful tool in the toolbox for the European Union. They could also reach into the drawer for the 93 billion euro in retaliatory measures that were put on hold last summer when the EU was trying to placate Donald Trump into a trade agreement. That trade agreement, as we heard there, was agreed. The question is whether the EU can now bring out those retaliatory measures on a whole range of US goods into the European Union as a result of this threat. Now, elsewhere, Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, has spoken to Donald Trump. He's going to meet him again in Davos next week. The Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, has also spoken to Donald Trump. She said she told him that these tariffs were a mistake. The question now is whether the Europeans can try and talk Donald Trump down from his position, but it's been fairly well established in the past that he is not persuadable and that the kind of ingratiation that European leaders have tried in the past often simply hasn't worked.
Sean, turning to you now, how serious is this breach of relations between the US then and Europe?
It's extremely serious. The Sunday talk shows here in America this morning have been full of this Greenland story and the sudden rupture with the European allies. The Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, you heard a little bit of his interview there. He said, first of all, the trade deal with Europe that we signed off last summer where we thought the tariff row had been sorted out, he said that is not finalised, and went on to state a very uncompromising position on Greenland itself. He said Greenland must be owned by the United States. It is a vital national security interest, and although they have this treaty, long-standing treaty with Denmark, allowing them to put whatever they want in there, whatever military forces they need, and do whatever mining they want to do, that is not good enough. He says it has to be owned by America, it's to be part of American territory, because if it's part of America, nobody will invade it. And more seriously again, with the amount of questions that were being asked about the future of the NATO alliance between Europe and the United States. Again, Secretary Bessent saying we're all for NATO, but we don't want to get dragged into a war. Well, that is precisely the point of NATO. Countries go to war for each other if there is a threat or a hostilities breaking out. It's precisely why Danish soldiers fought and died alongside their American counterparts in Afghanistan after the 9/11 attacks. This is a very serious breach of relations. A lot of American politicians have been coming out, Democrats and Republicans today, speaking up on this issue, including one senator who said there is zero support in Congress for any kind of military action by the US in Greenland.
Sean Whelan in Washington and Tony Connolly in Brussels, thank you to you both.